Hey guys, it is week 448 to have a bunch of reviews for you. Just a few stuff from Black Friday. Not everything came, of course, but let's just dive into the reviews. The first one up is a 1978 Korean flick from Radiance Films, and this is called Splendid Outing. And this is a movie that I did not know much about. I had not really heard about it, so Radiance Films continues to put out interesting, good work from all around the globe, which is definitely the kind of stuff I love discovering. So this one here, it was actually by Kim Seon Young, and I've never actually seen any of their films. Kind of do your research a little bit, and I was like, I'm actually unfamiliar with this director. They had, kind of a body of work that seemed to have actually a nice reputation behind it. So this is, I guess, what they call the from the special features, the genre of kind of the island kind of girl genre, and it's definitely an interesting genre. This is a incredibly interesting movie, definitely a drama, thriller, psychological horror film in a lot of aspects, and the commentary would definitely agree with that. I would say it has a lot of horror, horror adjacent kind of theme. So basically what we have here is this woman who's well off. She's a president of a very successful company, and she in her life, she's no longer, her husband, I think, has passed away, so she's this single woman who has a lot of power and responsibility, and carries herself very highly and everything along that nature. And you see like how she interacts with her male colleagues and all these other things like that. And she's starting to have these kind of strange daydreams, and she has this kind of this pole to kind of visit this like island kind of area, and this kind of coastal area and whatnot. And while she's there, she's kind of like swarmed by this group of men and taken on a boat and taken to this island. And at the first part of the movie, we have who we've kind of established who she is and whatnot. And the second part, there's a man on this island. They basically bought her, and this man is claiming, this is my wife. You are my wife. You escaped. You're going to take care of the child, and you're going to live this really poor, this life that is completely, isolating and demanding, and in this kind of really male-dominated culture. So we have obviously the dichotomy between, the of her having this life and then being shafted into this horrible existence, which is a way a lot of people, unfortunately women, had to live back then, and now probably in that idea, right? This is like two different worlds for different kinds of people and that kind of stuff. As the movie progresses, you think maybe there's something psychologically going on, that's different. Maybe she has this like dual personality, possibly, because they're start gaslighting her, and you maybe are starting to believe in the gaslighting stuff and whatnot. But the only reason you would think that is because in the beginning they kind of show these weird kind of hallucinations that they kind of give you, maybe it's possibly an unreliable narrator, but at the same time it's so aggravating because you want her to escape from this hell that she's in. And it's a beautiful location on the island. The performances are really strong. And there's one thing that happens in the movie, and I don't want to spoil absolutely everything because I think that the ending and it's a little different. I do think that part of this movie does hit a point where it becomes an rewarding ending, but the way they do it keeps the movie entirely fresh. Does that make sense to anybody? In a way, it's not fresh and predictable, but in the other aspect, it is fresh for how they do it and how they kind of bring it all together. It kind of just made it a little bit more interesting. And let me actually, I don't want to say this because I think a lot of people disagree, but there's like a little bit of open-ended quality to it. I think people could possibly interpret this a little bit different, but I love that aspect, of this person who is from this, rich, sophisticated life being thrown into this awful, experience of having to live like the other side. And when she kind of gets back to her own old world and everything like that, she has been kind of forgotten. They've moved past her, and she gets to see while people look at the other side and stuff like that. It's just an interesting movie and whatnot, and I think that the way it ends is not exactly the most predictable thing, and in some aspects it is, but it's also fresh and unique, and I thought this was a great film. If somebody wants to be, watch kind of a challenging film that's kind of in the vein of like a psychological horror drama and whatnot, I think you would enjoy this. So as far as the special features are concerned, there's a decent amount of good stuff here. New appreciation by director Lee Chang-dong, new interview with assistant director Chung Jae J. Young, audio commentary by Ariel Shudson. And this is the first commentary I believe I've heard her do. She's obviously a big fan of the movie and a big fan of the lead actress, and she talks a lot about that twinning of the two kind of characters, having these different, like, kind of existences and stuff like that. Pretty solid commentary, especially for someone I was not really familiar with. Then we have a visual essay by Pierce Conrad, which kind of talks about the island, subgenre, bringing up stuff like, I believe they bring up Bedeviled, which is a fantastic movie, or maybe the commentary did, but that kind of little subgenre of the island kind of woman stuff, I think they both bring that up. But nice release from Radiance Films of a really solid movie, and if you're into art films and that kind of aspect, I think a lot of people will eat this one up. Splendid outing. Great little Korean movie, beautiful locations, and you get this kind of interesting kind of look at all this kind of stuff here. I would highly recommend this one for and this is definitely something, like, I don't want to like give names to the patrons out there, but Tyler, Tadeo, you'll love this one. I think this is totally up your alley. Okay, this next one here is from Cult Epics, and it is The Island Closest to Heaven. Of course, it's an Obayashi movie, which they've been putting out a lot of these. And this is the first time watch for me on this one. This is 1984, kind of based on a book that they call on the back here a travelogue, best-selling travelogue from 66. And this follows kind of a young girl who's lost her father, and she's a very quiet, introverted kind of person. The opening is kind of beautiful with her father talking about, this island that this is like the closest place to heaven, and it gets set into her head, and she's just kind of been in her head ever since her father's passed away. So the mother agrees to, take some money that she saved and actually send her to this island. But she doesn't know exactly which island it is in this series of islands. So she kind of goes there doing her first thing on her own. I think she's 16 years old. She has all these giant life experiences ahead of her. It's definitely your I don't want to say typical, because nothing Obayashi does is typical. Even his TV movies from the early 80s don't seem to be very typical, honestly. So I would say that this is just kind of a really cool, unique coming-of-age story. Kind of following a little like this actress's like this character's kind of little journey here. I actually really enjoyed this. It's in a beautiful location. It's got really strong characters, and it's just a nice little drama here. And it's not like explicitly just that kind of love story here. It's a very touching and sweet kind of story here, and a lot of visual beauty that goes on, and callbacks to the opening and all that kind of stuff like that just kind of pieces it together. That's not overly obvious and a little complex and nuanced, but although it is well set up and well deserved. So the side characters kind of really help this film along, because we are focused on our main kind of love story here, which is just a little kind of like gentle kind of love story that these two meet. One of the characters is a Japanese person that's on this island that their family originally came from Japan, half of them, and the father is no longer there. So this person has this idea to go back to Japan, like that's what their goal is. And this person, this young girl here, is kind of trying to find that like missing piece that her father had. This kind of they planned to come here together, but now it's kind of her send off to her father coming here until she can move on with her life. But she meets this kind of renegade kind of tour guide who ends up being one of the best characters, and he has this great little side story of finding a lost love, and it's just kind of really works too. And the sunset stuff, I think, is also really kind of a nice little touch to this one. Overall, I think this Island Closest to Heaven is just a little gorgeous movie. I think that Obayashi's movies all have these little touching moments in there that really work. And I love his horror films, because that's just more my jam, more something that I'm interested in and can talk about and base off other horror films. But his little kind of like dramatic and poetic kind of stories here, I think, work really well. As far as the special features, we have a high-definition transfer audio commentary by film critic Derek Smith, Katakawa and Obayashi, visual essay by Alex Pratt. I like that one a lot because it talks about his relationship with Katakawa, who I really like. They put out stuff like Proof of Man and Beast Must Die, all that kind of stuff. The Beast to Die, the really cool Japanese films. But they talk about his relationship from 79 to 86 and the movies he made with them, how he met up with them, and all that kind of stuff like that. Interesting little visual essay. Tomiyano Harada's 28 Days in Caledonia, the making of Island Closest to Heaven. This is an hour long. Of course, you have to read subtitles there. Theatrical trailer, new improved English subtitles, new slipcase designed by Sam Smith, reversible sleeve with original Japanese poster art. And of course, we have the audio commentary by film critic Derek Smith, is also pretty solid. I can't remember all the little details. When I watch all the features and everything like that, it kind of absorbs into my head the things they say. I mean, he does brush against kind of the actors and stuff. And I believe this is this the special featurette? I thought there was something on here that kind of talks a lot. This might be actually the commentary, where they bring up the kind of Obayashi working with these kind of 3-star vehicles that they had. That Katakawa would kind of do these things with Obayashi, where they'd have these like this star and they'd put them in these films, and sometimes they have these branch off television series with the characters and all that kind of stuff like that. And they kind of mentioned 3 kind of prominent actresses that Katakawa had that like Sailor Suit and Machine Gun Girl, which is one of their films, which I've covered on here, being an actress and kind of having to replace her and whatnot. And that's nice, some interesting kind of stuff here as well. I love the main girl in here. I think she's absolutely fantastic. She's got a great, unique look about her, and she fits perfect here. She has like these romances, but they're never like they're not like sexual romances. They're very innocent and just kind of like the coming of age aspects are pretty wonderful. And even though the side characters, like the actual tour guide character, has like his good moments and his moment of breakdown that all kind of comes to a head and everything. But yeah, a really good movie. I have no complaints about any of Obayashi's movies so far. All really good stuff from his horror films like Hausu, Cute Devil, to his more, like love stories, like his girl, her island, his motorcycle, and stuff like that. Just good stuff, good, solid, interesting films that are made well too, and sweet. They have a sweet side to them, even if or a deep kind of message to them, even if they are horror films. Maybe Cute Devil not so much, but the rest they all do. Okay, next up is one from Deaf Crocodile, and this is a fantastic animated Hungarian film called The Heroic Times from 1983. This is based on, I think, a trilogy of books that were relatively popular in Hungary. I guess they were like taught to kids and whatnot, and from the supplemental features with people from Hungary on there talking about it, it seems like these stories were vastly important. So this animation is not like anything I've quite seen. It's kind of these style of oil paintings with this narration and music, and we follow this kind of infamous character that was supposed to be a real life person, and he's this great knight, but he starts off from these kind of small levels where like these small means and everything like that. His father was a knight, and him and his brother grew up, and they both kind of had different paths. His brother was more of kind of put into like I guess the castle, or like what the like he was somebody that politician, political kind of type character, and they never got quite along, and this guy was a strong, massive, would-be soldier over time. So we kind of see his rage throughout the movie, and his him damning himself and holding himself to these high standards that even the kings of the time do not hold themselves into a standard. And the idea that this stuff is so serious and noble to him that he has, pledged himself to the kingdom, and through his rage and other ideas, they kind of just, he ends up falling out and coming back in these 3 different kind of sagas of his life. But I love how it's edited with death. Well, they'll show somebody die in the early scenes, and later on they'll come back to that death. The idea that all this kind of anger is building up in him, the way they show that and portray that is true, that the murders are all kind of, it's all bundled together, right? When a new thing, when a new tragedy of his that he's caused happens, he remembers the old tragedies, and it's that trajectory of him, that rage that he can't get away from. And I think the character's portrayed really well. I think it's an incredibly tragic story, and I think the battle scenes are really well done too. All around, I think this is an excellent animated movie, and I've never seen anything quite like it. I would recommend this, to fans of animation, to fans of kind of folklore, and kind of battles and sword, and sandal films like that. I think you will get some interest out of this one, and especially it's nice to learn kind of this different countries' folklore. When I was going through the Deaf Crocodile kind of, Russian kind of films that they were talking about, those kind of sword and sandal Russian fantasy movies, you feel like you learn a little bit about the culture in like Eastern Europe and things of that nature. And I think that this one is another one, Heroic Times, and it's relatively short too. It's 83 minutes, so it although it has like an epic feel to it, the runtime actually doesn't keep you bogged down, and I think it goes pretty quick. As far as the special features on here, which I thought were pretty good, this is a new 4K restoration, of course, from the National Film Institute Film Archive in Hungary. New commentary track by historian Sam Deegan, who absolutely does a really good job in this one, loves this film, and I think this is probably one of her better commentary tracks. She always does a good job, but I like her style for sure. A lot of information on that. New essay, and she breaks down his anger and his rage and all that nature, I think, really well. New essay by film historian and professor Jennifer Lynn Barker. 3 animated shorts by Joseph Grimes. These are relatively short, one 3 minutes, one 5 minutes, one 3 minutes, and you can see kind of there's it's going to be tough to say that one, Concertismo, Parade, and Funeral. They're all pretty odd and strange, and they're fairly silent, which they do mention that they were originally going to cut the narration out of Heroic Times as well, which kind of would fit with these other ones. But I'm glad the narration is in there. It helped me, and I think it would help kind of I don't want to call it like a novice or somebody that pops this, and I think that you'll get a wider audience, although maybe that's not what they intend. But then we also have a new video interview with Heroic Times animator Sandor Beninsky, moderated by Dennis Bartok of Death Crocodile. It's about 25 minutes. He asked questions about his other animating stuff and working with the director and all that kind of stuff like that. New video interview with Gregi Radul, director of the National Film Institute Film Archive, on Yusuf Gemis and the history of Hungarian animation, moderated by Dennis Bartok. This is roughly an hour long. And he talks about, that they have such a huge library and whatnot, and a little bit about that kind of stuff. It's interesting stuff. And then Blu-ray authoring by David Mackenzie of Fidelity in Motion. This is a really good one. Region A locked here, but highly recommended. I like the kind of the way it plays out, and some of the stuff that happens. The character has these chances to kill people that you're like, oh, in any other movie he would, but he does not. And then he'll do something kind, but it's just like his rage bottles up. And the ending is particularly tragic, but really well done. That is Heroic Times. All right, we're going to finish up the Shaw Brothers Shawscope Volume 4 from Arrow here, and we're going to start with The Fake Ghost Catchers from 1982. Really fun movie here with, his name is House Howe and Alexander Fushang. Great comic duo. There's actually like 3-4 kind of comic characters in this one. But I covered this for 82, and I really enjoyed this one. And this time around, I liked it just as much here. This is from the director from the same year, a movie called Till Death Do We Scare, which is a fun kind of wedding kind of Hong Kong horror movie, which I also enjoy. That's the one where Savini did the effects on, which is kind of oddball, him do a Hong Kong one. But this one here, so it's a period piece, like many of these Shaw Brothers kind of horror and fantasy, fantastical movies here. Very rarely is there a contemporary picture. But what happens is we have these kind of guys who, do the Frighteners thing, kind of. Actually, not even that. They're just kind of scammers, right? They set up these ideas and they basically rob people their money to talk to old loved ones that they're not really talking to. But what happens is one of the kind of scammer's cousin is on the run because he has stolen this piece of information that would get this lord in trouble, or this kind of guy in power in trouble. And he's running through this graveyard, and there's this other person that's been put to death, and they put a curse, so they swore that they would marry this person, and if they couldn't, they would get revenge and death. So he's running through these woods, and these bad guys end up, or this cemetery, and these bad guys end up killing some grave robbers. It's convoluted, yes. Their blood spills on this corpse, and this guy comes back and he gets his revenge. He kills this woman that he wanted to marry, and then he's going to go after their sister. So this woman becomes a ghost as well, and this ghost kind of goes to these fake ghost snatchers, and they basically tells them, listen, you're going to help me save my sister's life. I'm in this umbrella, right? Or I'm going to kill you. So they enlist the help of Alexander Fushang, who's kind of like a street musician performer. So we have these kind of three doofuses, one of which is being chased by this kind of evil lord, one of which who's a street performer, and the other one who's just kind of stuck in this whole ghost snatchers thing. So these three basically have to transport this ghost to the sister before the other ghost can get there, and hijinks, of course, ensue. Yes, very convoluted, very fun. Fushang is also really fun in here. There's good stunt work, there's good kind of fights, and there's good special effects. There's a nice little kind of run-in with some bandits that are acting like ghosts. Overall, I would recommend the fake ghost chasers or snatchers. I always mix it up. Fake ghost snatchers. Let me double check what the features are in here. I actually don't think the fake ghost snatchers has any commentary. I don't think there is a commentary on here. I think that usually a lot of times on the disc they'll have two movies, but only one will have a commentary. You can watch it in Cantonese and Mandarin. Yeah, there was no commentary on that one. But really recommend the fake ghost catchers. I always want to say snatchers, but it's catchers. Good stuff. Okay, the next one here in the set is The Demon of Lute, if I'm not on there, and this is from 83, and this is more of a kid kind of fantasy movie. It does have, I guess, horror elements with kind of monster characters, but this is definitely in line with a kid's film, and this is actually one of my favorites in the set. It's just an absolute blast here. So this plot's pretty wild as well. So this character called, has this Demon of Lute, which is a special magical weapon, and he's been killing all the martial arts around him. So these people are finding these giant like groups of men all dead and everything like that. The Demon of Lute plays this tune and people die from it. So this martial artist, she's on her way to try to figure out, get the Demon of Lute to stop, take him out, but she needs these other two secret weapons, the fire bow and the fire arrow. She's on a quest to find this. She ends up running into this kind of cave dwelling kind of monkey kind of guy who doesn't know his origins, and he's survived in this cave. There's kind of a skeleton there, so you're not necessarily sure what he's all about, but he ends up saving her from two of these 6 kind of special monsters that work for the Demon of Lute. They're not exactly monsters, but they have special magical powers. Like one guy can grow a giant beard and he's super strong, and one is like an overly flamboyant kind of character. You've seen that in other Hong Kong films where we have like the kind of evil gay character. Shaw Brothers uses that character a couple times here and there, but one has like one eye and whatnot, and the evil kind of scorpion thing, like the logo on his eye. So there's like 6 of these guys, including a Batman and whatnot. So these two kind of join forces. At the same time, there's these pair of thieves who are a father and kind of son duo, and the kid's adorable, hilarious, doing a lot of martial arts. And these two are kind of like a nice heart and soul, and they all kind of join forces. They're all separated, and they come together to kind of stop these people, find the fire bow, find the fire arrow, and fight the bad guys. And of course, there's a twist who it ends up being, who the kind of villain is, which another movie kind of has the same kind of vibe. But I do think it's kind of fairly obvious who it ends up being. But the villain is particularly a baddie and a horrible person. But the fights are great. The fantastical stuff is great. And I love the lead, all the leads are great in here, but I really like the cave guy. I think that he does a tremendous performance. And there's lots of, like, a little side quests where he'll, like, run into these dwarfs and elves and all these kind of things, like these 2 elf characters. But as far as fantasy is concerned, I think it's actually tremendous. And it's a story that's been done before. I think they said Frank Jin does a commentary, and I think he mentioned, the 60s kind of doing this. He goes down the rundown of all the actors and the people involved with it, who have passed and who have not passed, all that kind of stuff like that. And they do mention that this has been done before. I think it's based on some classic literature here, but the Demon of Lute is just an absolute blast. It doesn't use your typical, Shaw Brothers sets, and in fact, the later day Shaw Brother movies from the early '80s kind of get away from, the library D Wolf music. The fucking Wolf music they use, D Wolf or Library. I can't think of it. I should know. It's like one of my favorite movies, and Dawn of the Dead uses it as well. So it's away from that, and you get more synthy kind of weird scores, and Demon of Lute definitely fills in with that. But this is a absolute blast. If you want, to show like your kids Shaw Brothers movies, I think the Demon of Lute is particularly one to go with. And like I said, there's a commentary by Frank Jin who talks about the movie, and I like his because he always manages to break down all the how much the movie made and all that kind of stuff like that. The one bad thing about this release is they don't list all the stuff that's on there, and it's on the back here. Yeah, a commentary by Frank Jin. But I listened to all the special features, but by the time it comes to do the videos, it's like, I listened to 30 commentaries for this thing, and I'm like, what's what and who's not. But there's a lot of names that reoccur, and Frank Jin's always one of them. But a good commentary for a really good Shaw Brothers kind of fantasy kids movie that I would highly recommend. Okay, we're doing one from 1983, and don't worry, Demon of Lute 83, I don't think it's a horror movie, but Seeding of a Ghost is most certainly a horror movie, and probably one of Shaw Brothers' most prolific horror films. I know I'm doing the 83 movies, but there's going to be a special video covering the Shaw Brothers horror films of 83 with a special guest, and there's 5 of them, but we're going to talk about a couple of them right here. And the first one we're going to talk about is Seeding of a Ghost, 83, from the director of Hell Has No Boundary, which was a great movie, Shaw Brothers horror film from 82. He also did Bloody Beast from, I think that one's 94, which is a Cat 3 kind of serial killer movie in the vein of something like Untold Story or something along those lines. Not quite as good as Untold Story or anything like that, but a decent movie nonetheless. 91, 94, I can't remember when that one came out. But so The Seeding of a Ghost is pretty infamous. So this starts off, I don't want to even say standard, but it has these two kind of cheating, husband and wife, which is very prevalent in a lot of the Asian, horror films and whatnot. So cheating husband, yeah, it's so we have a cheating wife, and she's cheating on her taxi cab boyfriend. The cab driver immediately made me think of like Taxi Hunter or any of those other Hong Kong movies or something. Cab drivers do not have a good reputation in Hong Kong, according to the cinema. So she's cheating on her husband who's a cab driver with this kind of rich playboy, and they're trying to hide it from their spouses all the time. And what happens is, she kind of gets an argument with the rich guy guy, and she kind of runs off. They had a run-in earlier with a couple of young thug kind of rich boys as well, and there's definitely a classism thing going on here between the cab driver and the other kind of rich assholes of the film. So she ends up kind of staying at this abandoned house just for a second, and she ends up getting attacked by these two guys, and she gets really horribly raped, and she ends up getting killed on an accident. And this guy feels completely helpless, and he has no means to do anything about it, but he did give, black magic kind of guy a ride. So he goes to him, and he basically forces this guy to put a curse on these people to get revenge. But any good revenge story, right, when you might as well dig two graves, and that's exactly what's going to happen here. And it kind of feels like, a Hong Kong version of Pumpkinhead in a lot of aspects, although Pumpkinhead came out, 5 years later in '88. But it does have that kind of aspect, right, where we dig up this corpse and we place it there, and as it progresses more and more and the vengeance is carried out, this guy, the cab driver, starts to look more and more ill as this kind of corpse here, which is supposed to be her, some weird thing like that, is getting stronger, and eventually there is a lot of sexual aspects into this one that aren't exactly into Pumpkinhead, so this makes this a little bit more nasty and exploitative and gross. Not to mention it starts off with your kind of rape revenge thing here, and like kind of a weird, like almost like haunted house kind of area. But in that aspect, it gets really bizarre, and it gets like grossly sexual. It's particularly gross. Not quite as gross as Bewitched, but there's a couple moments here where characters are eating like nasty gore, but they don't see it. Just like kind of hijinks like that. But as the revenge grows further and further, we have kind of this end, last kind of climactic moment where it gets balls out insanity with this party being attacked, and we have this kind of evil little tentacle creature, and that stuff's absolutely fantastic without spoiling it. But overall, Seeding of a Ghost is a wacky, crazy, gory, nasty exploitation film. We do have a commentary by James Munge, who talks about this film and the other films of the time and things of that nature, and it's so hard to, when you're talking commentaries on all these films, and they all do it, they have to relate to the other films of the time, so they're covering the same tracks with the same actors and the same people involved in these films. But I think Seeding of a Ghost is an absolute must-see for Hong Kong horror fans, and an absolute must-see for fans of extreme cinema, because Seeding of a Ghost is infamous for a good reason. Now this, I think, is a new master on here, because 88 Films had this one out, and it's been out of print for a very long time, unfortunately. Yeah, but newly restored lossless Cantonese and Mandarin for both on there. But yeah, great film. Highly recommend Seeding of a Ghost if you've never seen it. It's one of the 1983's weirdest and most extreme movies they have to offer. Okay, the next one here is Portrait in Crystal, another horror film from '83. Now, this is kind of like a horror film mixed with, your fantasy. So it's like Demon of Lute, but a horror film. And I loved Portrait in Crystal. I think this actually is going to sound crazy. This and Bewitched are probably my favorite in this set. You can't account for good taste, but Portrait in Crystal is fantastic. Same director of Super Inframan, which is also in the set, and Bloody Parrot, which is also in the set, and Completely Wild. So you're in good hands here. So Portrait in Crystal. This is, you're definitely your fantastical thing here. So we have this this crystal maker. He makes these little statues out of crystal, and there's the myth is, you spill blood on it, the crystal can come to life, and that's kind of what happens here. It's like weird science, right? No, but it's kind of in that aspect, right? And this crystal is used to kill a bunch of people that are held in high regard, these martial artists, and this puts all the blame on this crystal maker who didn't do anything wrong. So him and his friend that he calls Fatty, which is a classic Shaw Brothers or Hong Kong name, right? Like Fatty Kent Chang always played that character Fatty in a movie. This isn't Kent Chang, but you get the point. They're going to call him Fatty throughout the entire film. So him and Fatty kind of go on this adventure to try to figure out what's going on, and all signs point to kind of this kind of, I don't even know what you would call it, like this fantastical palace where this woman who has these magical powers is kind of running things there, and they're kind of on their way to that to find their answers and everything like that. At the same time, there's this character called Poison Yama, whose son was actually on the hit list and was killed, and he's out for revenge, and he's hiding behind this Phantom of Opera kind of style mask where he's awesome looking, he's got the long hair, and he's got this mask, and he's all messed up underneath, but he's a great character. And there's a lot of poison in this film. Poison Yama uses the poison, there's antidotes, so it's in that Shaw Brother kind of thing where like they went through their phase where there was just constant poison, and this whole box set is just movies with everybody getting poisoned. Like Battle Wizard has the at him and all that kind of stuff like that. So that's very, very prevalent in these movies here. So Portrait in Crystal, like I said, is just a really amazing, entertaining movie. The soundtrack is one of my favorites they did. Very synthy and very, kind of delirious and crazy and surreal. But so on his adventures, of course, they run into, this girl that they're going to protect, and the fatty guy's always lying about his age. It's really cute stuff, and they really paint, the fatty character as this very likable, entertaining, funny comic relief, and the lead guy is as well. But when they get to their destination, not everything is as it seems, and people aren't who they say they are. There's a lot of deceitful stuff, which is very, very prevalent in the Shaw Brothers movies as well. Not everything is as it seems. People are not who they say they are, and we have these reveals in these battles. But one of my favorite moments in here, without spoiling absolutely everything, is the place is booby trapped, and there is this kind of a major fight scene, and someone is dying, and the character who is dying is kind of looking at someone, and the other character is looking at them, and they see them normal, but the character who's dying is kind of pulling back, and they're seeing that kind of person leave down a hallway, and I was like, oh, that is so unique. And this director obviously likes to try weird and different things, and Super Inframan and this are night and day, but this and Bloody Parrot, I think, do share a lot of the same DNA. But that visual scene within the dungeon where they're pulling away, I was like, that is very sad and tragic, and it goes very dark. But the end fight scenes are great. It's gory. It's bloody. And like I said, this is like the R-rated version of Demon of Lute, which is also really great stuff. But Portrait in Crystal is my favorite in the set. I would recommend it. Filled with familiar faces. And there's no commentary on Portrait in Crystal, which is kind of a bummer. But I do have the imprint version as well on this one. And I'll definitely be talking about Seeding of a Ghost and Portrait in Crystal when I do my Shaw Brothers 1983 movies, which I'm looking forward to that video. Should have that one at the end of December or early January done for you guys. So, yeah. Okay, the last in the set here of the Shaw Brothers movie is Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And this is also 83 here. And this is the most odd one of all these films here. So the star of this one is kind of like a more of adult comedic kind of actor. I know him from Red Panther from 83, and he's in Hex vs. Witchcraft from 82. So I know he did a bunch of other films, but these are kind of in my wheelhouse. So Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star is... Man, it's so hard. It's just so repeating yourself in this set. Like, this is the craziest Shaw Brothers movie ever. And then you move on to the next one. You're like, this is weird. But it's like, no, Shaw Brothers just is very crazy in the 80s. And Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star is an odd one here. So we have this young virginal girl who meets this rich guy who obviously wants her. But she's got to try out to, impress the father, who is an absolute monster. That's where a lot of comedy elements come into. So we have that side story here. Where she gets abducted by this alien and, supposedly raped by the alien that basically pushes her in a bad spot. And we have these two kind of debt collectors. One is played by the comedic guy I mentioned, and the other is played by this big oafish guy who I know from We're Going to Eat You, the Choi Hark movie, which is a great movie. And he plays one of the cannibals in that. He's also in, I think, The Happening from 1980, which is kind of the Hong Kong movie where the films where it's like the youth on a run or something along those lines. I think he's the gas station attendant. It's been a while since I watched that one for 80, but good film. The Youth on the Run ones I like. This is actually by the director who did Man on the Brink, which is a serious crime film from Hong Kong, which I think Vinegar Syndrome put it out on a partner label or something. I've seen the movie, I think, again, from 80 or 81. I can't remember. Good film, though. But all these characters' paths are going to cross when they all try to commit suicide on a railroad track in hilarious detail. But they end up kind of bonding together and trying to figure out what the hell happened. What the alien abduction kind of stuff happened. At the same time, there's this kind of mad scientist who's kind of turning into a slight werewolf kind of style character. He's really goofy, and he plays into this. This movie references everything from Marilyn Monroe to Star Wars to Close Encounters of the Third Kind to numerous other references that I wouldn't get because I'm, on the Western side. And the commentary, I think it's a Frank Ginn commentary. He breaks all this down and says, well, that's funny because there's the dichotomy between the old and the young, the rich and all that kind of stuff like that playing in the fact here, and all sorts of bizarre, weird kind of things playing into this movie. And this is just a weird one overall. It's enjoyable, and the commercial would suggest that there's actually more action sci-fi stuff going on than there is. This one is, not necessarily that. It has a lot of like drama and love story. The music is good and fun, and the Twinkle Twinkle Little Star motif, little music plays in throughout the entire thing here and there. But overall, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star is a fun, weird, bizarre film from Shaw Brothers, and an odd way to end the set. But there are some features on here as well. We have, of course, a seamless branching option to watch Cantonese version with additional scene for Mandarin version. And the Mandarin version, I can't remember why it was cut. But we have the Frank Jin commentary, newly filmed interview with director, co-writer Alex Chung, newly filmed appreciation video by scholar Victor Fan. I will mention here, though, we have a bonus disc, a disc 10 here, that has a lot of features that correlate to or go with the other films in the set. So Hong Kong, The Show of Mr. Shaw, 1972 French TV profile Shaw Brothers, about 15 minutes long. Brand new video essay on Ho Mung Hao, written and narrated by Grady Hendrix. And Ho Ming Hao, I think, was the one who did Super Inframan, if I'm not mistaken here. Newly filmed interview with maybe I'm wrong here. Newly filmed appreciations of Super Inframan with Leon Hunt, Luke White, and Kim Newman. And they kind of talk a little bit about, how Batman was in the 60s, and this movie, Kim Newman mentions that, Roger Ebert gave Super Inframan a pretty solid review. Newly filmed appreciation by Bat Without Wings by Wayne Wong. Newly filmed appreciation by Demon of Lute by Luke White. Newly filmed appreciations of Battle Wizard and Demon of Lute by Victor Fan. So these are all just kind of breaking these movies down, more supplemental stuff with the films and love for them as they rightfully deserve. So this is a fantastic set here. I'll go over it one more time for all the people. Super Inframan Disc 1, Oily Maniac, Battle Wizard, Disc 2, Disc 3, Black Magic 1 and 2, Disc 4, Hex and Bewitched, Disc 5, Hex vs. Witchcraft, Hex After Hex, Disc 6, Bat Without Wings, Bloody Parrot, Disc 7, The Fake Ghost Catchers, and Demon of Lute, Disc 8, Seeding of a Ghost Portrait in Crystal, Disc 9, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, Disc 10, Bonus Disc. So you horror fans out there, I would say Oily Maniac, Black Magic 1 and 2, Hex, Bewitched, Hex vs. Witchcraft, Hex After Hex, Bat Without Wings, Bloody Parrot, Fake Ghost Snatchers, Seeding of a Ghost, Portrait and Crystal are all horror films. So this set is predominantly horror, and the stuff that's not horror is horror adjacent. I would highly recommend this set. This is probably my favorite Shaw Brothers set that's been out, just because I am a huge fan of a lot of the films in the set already and revisiting a lot of them. So just a great set, one of my favorite releases of the year so far. Highly recommended. Shawscope Volume 4. Okay, relatively quick with this one. Want to do one 2025 movie, or it counts as 2025. This is technically 2024. This is a Mickey Keating movie who's done numerous movies from like Darling. He's always making movies. He did didn't he do a Lovecraftian one not too long ago? But Mickey Keating's been making movies for years, and he never really disappoints. They're always pretty solid stuff here. Carnage Park, I think, is another one by him. This is called Invader, and this one's relatively short, like 67, 70 minutes or something along that line. And I guess the biggest actor in here is what is the actor? I always forget his name, but he was one of the kings of mumblecore. He's just an actor who pops up in a bunch of stuff here. He's in You're Next, and always a good actor, VHS. But this one follows the story of I believe she's coming from, I think she's coming from out of country. English, I don't think, is necessarily her first language or whatnot. She's definitely coming from out of state. She's supposed to meet her cousin, and they're supposed to pick her up from the airport. And right away, she's just got a bad feeling here. And I think the idea is, how people look at you when you look like you might not be from this country, or you look like you may be an outsider and whatnot. But the whole movie is setting this constant dread, this outsider feeling for somebody, and this paranoia. And you really do feel it here. It's definitely a creepy home invasion movie that's really kept close to the camera, keeps close on you, and it really kind of follows one character until the very end, where it kind of decides to switch gears and whatnot, and kind of do its own thing here. But so the film follows this character, of course, and she's supposed to be picked up from the train station or bus station, and nobody's there to get her. So obviously there's something wrong, and right away she calls a cab, and the cab driver seems untrustworthy, so you never know where the danger is going to come from. But she ends up walking these long kind of this path miles to get to where she's going, and nothing seems right. Her cousin isn't there, nobody's answering. She ends up going to the workplace and meeting a coworker, and they start to try to uncover what is going on, and it just feels really kind of grim and realistic and creepy. But what it turns out is there's a home invader of types, and I don't want to spoil absolutely everything, but it's very tense, and you think, man, is this going to be drawn out? But it feels like in real time in a lot of ways. But Joe Swanberg is the actor's name. I finally came to me. But the ending is, the way it's filmed is so freaking intense and just well done, and leaves you kind of left out in the open and the cold and stuff. And I would recommend checking this out. This is good stuff, really well made on a budget, And, you know, it's not the most original story ever, but it manages to capture kind of a fear that I think we all have, and it does it pretty well. That is called Invader. Check it out. All right, guys, let's get into those 1983 movies.
I have returned.
Okay. Show me.
Where is the music now? The sound of laughter. There was never laughter.
Like
What's what like?
screwing a psycho.
What the fuck was that?
It's gone.
God blows dead dogs. Just lay it in there.
Eat shit and die, Ricky!
Eat shit and live, Bill.
Yeah, Bill, he's a little wet.
31. 32. 32. Year of a man's prime, loved by many women. He might still learn to swim. 32. Going. Gone.
The kid was cut in half, Arnie. They had to scrape his legs up with a shovel.
Well, isn't that what you're supposed to do with shit? Scrape it up with a little shovel.
One final moment of revenge.
Wondering what's real. All of it is real.
You want to see something really scary?
You bet.
Really?
Yeah.
Get the video, Joe! Long live the new flesh!
No choice but to kill the son of a bitch.
Living one's entire life in a state of fear. It is all I have ever known. Fear.
Are you ready?
Okay, go ahead. What are you doing?
First one up here is Copperhead. Anybody seen the movie? You have to say Copperhead that way, or did you even see it? Yeah, Copperhead the Snake movie. This is actually, supposedly, possibly, one of the first movies made for the video market. And it makes sense because they directly work with, VCI Tulsa kind of guys, which they have a whole documentary about those, like, Blood Cult and stuff like that, and it's kind of inspired them to start making their movies like Blood Cult and Revenge and all those low-budget movies like that in Tulsa. But Copperhead the Snake movie is actually not made by filmmakers. It's made by, a husband and wife kind of pair of people that have a very interesting background if you watch the special features from the husband was in the guns, he was a professional gambler, he was in the snakes, and he was an artist, all this kind of stuff like that, and they made one of the weirdest freaking movies I've seen. Now, a lot of people give this really poor ratings, but I think I like this a lot more than most people. But, I like it's shot on 1-inch tape, which is better quality, and I that's one thing I never really caught on, when you see shot on video, some of them look really bad, but when you watch, like, Redneck Zombies from its original elements, I think it was shot on a better quality of tape, maybe, or something along that lines and stuff like that. And this one, I think, has that, too. And the early SOV movies were actually made, like, professionally, just shot on crummier stuff, so they still did things of that nature. But this is definitely a backwoods, shot in the Ozarks kind of movie. So the filmmakers and everybody talks about it a lot. The filmmaker's son's all over it, the wife and the director, they're all on here. So they talk about they made a movie that they know what the hell they're talking about, like the Ozarks, guns, and snakes. So it feels very genuine in that aspect. You write what you know, and they did that. So this is an oddball film. It opens up, there's animal cruelty in this movie, so a warning. They do mention that they made this movie look like they killed dozens and dozens of snakes. 3 snakes died while making it. I'm not trying to justify it, I'm just passing on the information. information, okay? It is way too late in time in films to be still doing that. But if you listen to the commentaries and the special features, it does soften, the initial impact of watching it. I will be true of that. There's also a rat that is eaten by a snake on here. So we open that up, kind of catch your attention. And we kind of follow this family of just really degenerate, awful people. And the lead guy in here reminds me kind of like John Glover meets Jim Varney. And he has that look of that guy from, he's like a character actor who's like in a force of evil. He looks just like him in this, but he's just this intense guy who's got all these guns, and he's got his son-in-law and his son and daughter and his wife, who's this really religious woman who's constantly praying and stuff, even though she's with an absolute monster. But these people seem to be on the run, and they have bought this old church. It's all beat to hell, and there's snakes everywhere because there's rats everywhere and whatnot. And the first 5 minutes, they run into this wildlife, artistic kind of artist who draws these landscapes and things of that, and then nature and animals in it. And he's super friendly, and he ends up capturing this copperhead in a jar, and he's like, hey, I'm going to let it go. And the guy says, put that snake down, and he kills it. And he's just that puts a bad taste in it, obviously, something in between this. This family, this guy, this father of this family is just one of those classic characters, right? He's always the problem. Every time you run into him, he's always the issue. He's always the problem. He's that guy. And he's just that element here. And as it progresses and stuff, you kind of see the relationships between the family a little deteriorating and whatnot. And we have these other side characters that pop. And there's this great moment where there's this old guy that gets into it with him. He's like, I'll take you off your head right off at the neck and whatnot. And I love that stuff. It's not a professionally made movie or anything along the line. They make the joke a lot in the special features that the little kid actually, who's in this is the best performance in the movie. It probably is true, but I do think that there's some decent performances in here. I don't think the wildlife guy is bad at his wife, and I don't think the main baddie is. He's got that look and he's got the energy about him that really works, and I'm not going to say he's as good a heavy from the, the 70s classic films like Don Strode or David Hess or something along those lines, or Nicholas Worth, but he's decent, and he's creepy, and he's a piece of shit. But they use real guns, there's real shooting, there's real snakes, and that adds that element of kind of interest and intrigue, and that's exactly what they said. They said we had to be genuine, real with this stuff. We had to have that stuff real. If we had fake guns and rubber snakes, this movie would be unwatchable. But watching this and the score and everything was just homemade enough and weird enough to kind of intrigue me. It's a really bizarre film, had tons of features, and I think Copperhead is it's an oddball movie that I would have watched eventually, I'm sure of it, but as far as an animals attacks kind of movie, I think it's worth watching. I enjoyed it. I think it's pretty cool and weird and unique, and Terrorvision did a good job with this one. Tons of features. New interview with writer-director Leland Payton, new interview with producer Crystal Payton, new interview with actor Ross Payton, feature-length commentary with Leland, Crystal, and Ross, video commentary with Leland and Crystal, feature commentary with the Mix Six, and this is, the son has his own podcast where he has a couple friends talking about the movie and everything like that. Cruelty-free version of the film, which is nice. Isolated score, storyboard, script, and press materials, bonus lost film, Motor Home from Hell. Man, I watched some of this. I didn't watch the whole movie, okay? I should have maybe. But there was a part with crawdads on a sandwich and hot sauce that I almost threw up. Yep. And then we have feature-length commentary on that as well with the family and whatnot. Crew members, Chris Farmer and whatnot. Trailer for Motor Home there and whatnot. But this is a weird, oddball film. And if you can get over kind of the animal cruelty, I would really recommend checking out Copperhead, the snake movie. It did well, and the story behind it is more interesting than the movie, maybe, possibly. I don't know. It depends on what you guys think, but I thought it was pretty cool stuff. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about this oddball of a movie here called The Returning. Now, the same year Scalps came out, the Fred Olen Ray movie, the Native American kind of possession slasher movie, and a year after Ghost Dance was made, the kind of Native American possession movie, we have, I guess, the Thinking Man or art film version of that in The Returning from 1983. Lee Strasberg's daughter is actually the star of this one, or one of the stars of it. But this is an oddball film where we have this family kind of vacationing in, it's got to be Arizona or somewhere around the lines, and the father takes these kind of stones that he shouldn't take, and on his way home, he's kind of sees this Native American in the street, in the road, and you kind of get the idea that he's been potentially possessed like that. As we kind of progress further, he's acting a little strange, and we have this guy in a bar who's like, do you ever believe in reincarnation? To the bartender, he's like, what the hell are you talking about? He kind of falls over, and later on he's driving and he ends up running over this guy's kid, the guy who initially stole the Rock's kid. The kid dies, and so it puts this kind of weird kind of thing with these two guys. It's kind of like a reincarnation story where they both had these kind of Native American people have hopped into them, and they're supposed to kind of relive the reoccurring, thing happened throughout history, right? Which is very prevalent in the early 80s. I kept having to say that in 1982 videos. I was like, oh, like this whole reincarnation or reincarnation possession stories. They're just absolutely everywhere. I think it was just a thing that was very popular in the 70s, carry over into the 80s, but it's absolutely everywhere here. And this is another one of these movies here where these characters are destined to fill out the fate and everything like that. It's well acted, and the kind of guy is kind of semi-possessed by his kids, and so his kid. So like there's these really uncomfortable moments where he's like in school and he goes there and he's talking to like a kid like he's his best friend, and he ends up fighting teachers. And it's heavy in the drama, weird in kind of the psychological horror aspects and everything like that. And I think that there's some refreshing qualities about it, but I think it's just a little too heady and weird, maybe to not even heady, but just a little bizarre and disjointed to never really gather enough traction to be super interesting. And plus the quality's not great on it, but I think The Returning is definitely worth talking about, definitely worth kind of checking out. And if you're a big fan of Native American possession horror films from the early 80s and you're like, man, that ghost dance and that scalps are a little too trashy for me or a little too slasher-esque, and you're like, I want a smart one, I want a thinking man's one, then I guess you could check out The Returning. But yeah, it's not going to be for everybody. Also, not to be confused with The Return, the Graydon Clark movie from 1980-81, which is an alien kind of picture, which I have watched for 80, not seen in a while. Don't remember too much about it, but not to be confused with that one, or not to be confused with The Returning from, I think, 1994, which is a Hong Kong or Taiwan movie that I watched, which is rather kind of a dull film. But yeah, this is an odd film and maybe worth interest to a lot of people, I think. Okay, the next one from 1983 is a thriller. It's called Lies, and it was written and directed by the Wheat brothers. I think they're Wheat brothers. Jim Wheat, I can't think of the other ones, but they wrote some other films. But this is, I don't know if it's their debut film, but this is one that they directed. And this is an oddball kind of thriller with a pretty solid cast. Now, the funny thing is the two main leads in the movie are people that I don't know by like name. But the performances are really strong, especially the lead female in here. Great performance. I think that she should have been in dozens and dozens of movies. She is in it, but like kind of a bigger star here. But the names that I think most people on this channel would know is, of course, Bruce Davidson from Willard, great actor, kind of an underrated actor. Burt Remsen from Terror Vision, great actor too. I just watched one with him called Sweet Hostage not too long ago. Clu Gallagher from Return of the Living Dead, The Last Picture Show, Nightmare on Elm Street 5, just great actor as well. And is there anybody else I'm kind of missing in here? But yeah, it's got a nice little genre cast in here. Oh, Stacy Keach Sr. has a little role in here. But we have this kind of struggling actress. Dick Miller's in here too as a small role. Struggling actress who quits on a movie set, and her agent and Burt Remsen's like, I don't know if this is going to work out. So she kind of ends up, kind of being kind of really in a hard place between a rock and a hard place. And she has this boyfriend that's constantly, he's a writer and he's in and out of her life, not to be necessarily trusted. But she's offered this job after she kind of auditions, and it's an odd job. And she's supposed to play this character, which is based on a kind of a true incident happened where, this woman's parents were killed, and she was saved by, her sister, her brother, and whatnot at the last minute, and this brutal kind of attempted murder, and it's shown in graphic detail in the very beginning. And so she's supposed to play this character, and she ended up in a insane asylum, and this would-be producer's telling her all this stuff, that kind of nature and things. And so she makes all these videotape footages and whatnot. And I don't know how far to go with this without spoiling it, but there's the movie's called Lies, so you absolutely know that there's tons of characters lying in here, and not everything is as it seems. And even the title itself, acting is lies. So who's lying? She's acting, and it's all confusing and whatnot, but people are not to be trusted, and there's a switcheroo and all sorts of people that are involved that are crooked, and it ends up being kind of a hospital horror kind of story here, but definitely a thriller first. I think the acting's really strong. I think that a lot of the character motivations are cool, and I think that there's a part in this movie where two characters, that would be such a typical piece of shit thing where they're like, well, she's crazy. Like, yep, she must be crazy. I'm leaving. Where they don't do that. And I was like, thank God. I was so tired of that. Like, there's that whole story point in movies like Alone or Hush, where, like, of course there's a guy, and he'll be like this, he'll be like, yeah, she's crazy, and the other guy who they're talking to, they're running from this horrible violent person, and a character will be like, she's crazy, and the other guy will be like, oh, she must be crazy. It's like, stop doing that stupid plot point. It's fucking garbage. And then, of course, that guy puts his guard down and the guy kills that guy. I hate it. I'm so tired of it. There's a movie called Run that did it. didn't do it, and I liked the movie better for it. It did the opposite of it, and I was like, refreshing. But when they do that shit, it's so annoying, and this one was refreshing because characters actually were like, no, that's not true, I don't buy it. You know, it's it's refreshing not to trust doctors in movies sometimes, you know, because they're always up to something in movies. Also probably caused a lot of distrust of doctors, but I think it's really well done. There's a really weird death in this movie involving, you know, somebody being killed with an elevator that I'm like, how are they going to get away with that? How the fuck are they going to manage to get away with that? But overall, I thought Lies was really great, really entertaining movie, filled with a lot of good actors and good acting, and just overall a nice thriller that I hadn't heard much about. I originally heard about this movie on Pure Cinema Podcast by Elric Kane and Brian Sauer talked about it, and they gave it a hearty recommend, and I would recommend this one. I think it's really good, really fun stuff. All right, I'll be super brief with this one here. So this is from 1983, and this is The Dracula, according to the credits here. The Dracula from Thailand. That's right, The Dracula. Although it's just Dracula. The cover art's amazing on it, but this is your kind of typical Dracula story told in a different country, and I don't know how deep I can go into this about because the subtitles were absolutely garbage, and the first 40 minutes is incredibly dull, if not the first 50 to 60 minutes. So there's kind of a wedding being planned coming out, and Dracula's uncovered. I don't know if he's actually a guy that was already there, was possessed. It's not really necessarily thing really explained all that well, or the quality of the video wasn't that great, so I couldn't frickin' tell. Overall, you know, The Dracula is, you know, interesting to see how Thailand handles Dracula, but it's also incredibly dull and boring and typical, but there's a couple little differences that are fun. I guess, you know, the precious metals that are used to stop Dracula, which is in the folklore, you know, the silver possibly, but I think it's iron, whatever. In this one, it's just kind of a precious metal. There's some decent special effects at the very end that remind me of stuff from like Indonesian flicks, where we have a kind of like monster woman running around and she has the weird face. They do that here on the special effects in the coffins when the vampires are actually put to death, you know, in your classic thing. And the ending happens way too quick, you know. The horror and the action starts happening in like the last 15 minutes. Before that is a lot of drama, a lot of talking, a lot of just boring stuff, and the translated subtitles were absolute garbage on YouTube, so it's hard to kind of judge this movie fairly, but I wanted to give it a spin. And you know, I won't do this too much if I'm going to have to give a movie a really bad shake because I didn't get a good quality version of it, but sometimes you can tell. Sometimes I watch bad quality movies and they end up being pretty good. The Dracula from Thailand is not one of them. Alright guys, the Patreon pick is a doozy. This is Once Upon a Time in the West by Sergio Leone, score by Ennio Morricone, of course Henry Fonda, Charles Bronson, Claudia Cardinelli, Jason Robards, and tons of other people pop up in here, from Aldo Sambrol, Frank Brana, from Pieces, of course. So just amazing cast in here. So what the hell can I say about Once Upon a Time in the West? Did I say Once Upon a Time in America? I probably did. But Once Upon a Time in the West, that's Sergio Leone's last movie, his other one. But Once Upon a Time in the West is like the pinnacle, the last, like, you know, that amazing spaghetti western. Of course, Sergio Leone did the Dollars trilogy. This is kind of like the finale of his spaghetti westerns, although I think Fistful of Dynamite did come out afterwards. I can't remember. It's been a while since I watched that one. But this is a 2-hour and 45-minute epic kind of thing. It's a love letter to all the kind of American westerns and other westerns, as well as being this a beautiful kind of like amazing epic masterpiece that kind of encapsulates a lot of the western stuff too. This come out in 68 or 69. But regardless, I think that this and The Wild Bunch, for your money, are the two best westerns ever made, and I think that they both kind of are the best. Kind of, you have the American kind of death of the West, the train coming in, and you have the Italian death of a West kind of train coming in here. So it opens up an amazing scene, and the thing about Once Upon a Time in the West is each scene, you know, the movie feels like it's 10 scenes, and it's 2 hours and 45 minutes long, so it takes its time, but it builds up all the suspense and tension. Like each one of these scenes is its own freaking movies, and it works really well. And especially that opening comes in. We have Woody Strode and Jack Elam, and the rumor, of course, it was supposed to be Clint Eastwood, Eli Wallach, and Lee and Cliff to say kind of goodbye to the Dollars trilogy and write it off, and this is its own thing, kind of whatnot. But of course, we have Charles Bronson showing up as harmonica on this train, and it's just this beautiful scene. And we set up the characters, no music played throughout it, the sound effects, and it becomes its own kind of character. And we introduce all four of the characters. We have harmonica, Charles Bronson, who's supposed to be the hero of the story. We have Claudia Cardinelli, who's like the female character of the story, and a great character that has all these interactions with all these kind of males in the movie. And we have Henry Fonda, who's the villain, which is insane to cast Henry Fonda. You know, I know him from like 12 Angry Men, where he's this good-natured, amazing guy, and now he's this evil, blue-eyed monster. And his performance is actually one of the best, if not mean, it's so hard to pick a favorite in this movie. I love all four of the performances are so strong, and all the characters are so well written. But it's just he's such an evil bastard, and he's accompanied by like one of the strongest themes of all time. And it's just so good. And Jason Robards is kind of your lovable rascal, kind of Eli Wallach, ugly kind of character, and he's great in this too. You know, and I've been watching Something Wicked This Way Comes a lot because, you know, I'm covering it for 83, and I've been watching all the versions that I can find of it. And I love Robards in that movie, and I love him in this movie too. He's just so good and so strong. Minimal dialogue, but all the dialogue is absolutely priceless and amazing and funny and clever and witty, and it plays into the strengths of the actors, especially, you know, Bronson. You brought too many. I found 3 coats, and in the coats there was men, and in the men there was bullets, like 3 holes. You're like, oh, it's so good. But it has this classic kind of feel of the Western too, like the ideology in there. There's a scene, one of my favorite scenes is in here. I'm going to paraphrase it, of course, but when Henry Fonda and Charles Bronson have this kind of back and forth, because Charles Bronson's been following him and hunting him, and he's not letting him know why he is, and it's driving Henry Fonda crazy. And Fonda is this villainous kind of violent person, kind of like, you know, in Unforgiven, where Clint Eastwood and Gene Hackman are only good at the one thing. You know, Eastwood was good at being a criminal, and Hackman is good at being a sheriff, and they use their violence and their intimidation. That's all they're good at. When they try something else, like building a house or being a farmer, they're terrible at it. So, you know, Frank in this movie, Henry Fonda, is only good at being a killer, and he has this guy who's kind of in charge of him, this railroad man who is also a figurehead in the West, a villain, if you will, the death of the West, kind of bringing these all to the West, you know, everything else. Is a businessman, and Frank can't be a businessman. And there's this great back and forth between Bronson and him, where he says, you know, Bronson says something about, you know, now Mr. Morgan, he would be fine. No one I'm out in the world, but not you. He's like, Morgan's a businessman. He's like, and he's like, you're just a man. He's like, a dying breed. An ancient race, and that whole back and forth between them two is just wonderful. Great stuff here. And each character has their own musical theme, and it's one thing, honestly, why the Italian movies, I think, last so long in my head and memory is the theme music. And the music is so strong, and the cinematography is so strong, the introductions of the characters are so strong. Frank Wolf is also in here in a really great role. And that opening, I think, you know, is just like forever lived in Quentin Tarantino's mind, because when you watch his movies, like the Frank introduction, it's just all Tarantino's movies feel like it, honestly. And I mean that as a compliment. That's probably why I like Tarantino's movies, because I like this movie so much. I saw this movie very young on television. I stayed home sick one day, and I was probably 8 or 9, and it came on TV, and I was engulfed in it. I loved it, and I fell in love with the movie, and I only watched it a handful of times throughout my life, but I never forgot it, and every time I watch it, it's a treat. It's kind of like a reward for yourself. This stuff like The Great Escape and The Dirty Dozen were movies that I just had an infatuation with at a young age, but I just think that this is brilliantly done in every aspect, the characters and the way it's done. There's tons of features on here, but it's also incredibly touching. And when I was watching this is just kind of an oddball thing. They say when you want to look in an actor's eyes, or in a movie, when you're staring at someone's eyes for a film set, you never try to look in both their eyes, because you'd be looking back and forth here. This is the only movie you could test that on, because the close-ups on the eyes, all Leone's movies, but the close-ups on the eyes on Bronson and Frank and Henry Fonda going back and forth, you have to look in one eyeball. Otherwise, you'd be looking back and forth the whole time, and it will just fuck up the shot. But I'm just wondering, I'm watching the intensity of that. And the reveal, of course, the revenge story, the reveal at the end is brilliant, because you're building up to that. It's just, I guess this is the one that you base all spaghetti westerns against. You know, I don't think there's been a better one. I haven't seen them all. I'm not an expert, but I do enjoy them. And for my money, I just don't think there's 2 better westerns than The Wild Bunch and Once Upon a Time in the West for me. I just think that they're the epic pinnacle of the times, and they're just great. I mean, I love Man Who Shot Liberty Valance is great. And then the one that I saw, like, kind of growing up when I was real young, like 5 or 6, you know, Tombstone was just one that stuck with me and is one of my all-time favorites. But this one is just such a powerful movie, from the cinematography, the action, the music, the characters. It has the classic tropes in here too, with the train. If you don't have a fucking train, if you don't have a fucking horse, and you don't have it shot in widescreen, you're not even a Western. That's how I always felt like it. You know what I mean? Like a low budget Western without those kind of things. It's like, what are we even doing here, right? I mean, you could go to a Western without the train is not necessary, but the widescreen and the horses probably are, for me at least. But no, there's a lot of features on here. In this beautiful edition here. This is the special edition. You got it opened up here. Cool stuff here. They were 3 men in her life. One to take her, one to love her, and one to kill her. Oh, great stuff. Great line there. And they do mention in the special features and stuff how different Claudia Cardinelli's character is than a lot of the other women, because she becomes this kind of mythical legend of the West as well. All of them are these mythical legends of the West, and although some of them do die at the end, you got the, the kind of rascal, kind of bandit character who, they all must die. The train is coming, and they all must die or go away. There's no place for them. And it's great in the commentary here. The one with the contributors, the commentary contributors from John Carpenter, John Milius, Alex Cox, film historian Steve Christopher Frayling, and Dr. Sheldon Hall, and cast and crew, because they mentioned, well, this is from, the Searchers, that shot there. This is kind of the reminiscent of, John Wayne doesn't have a place in the Searchers, as Charles Bronson kind of riding off here. This is this shot. This is that shot. I'm like, oh, wow. I've seen this movie when I was young, and I've seen it when I was like in the, 20s and stuff, but rewatching it this time with that context, and you're like, oh, I never really registered how much of a love letter this is to Western, as well as being like the most amazing spaghetti Western. It's not as stylized. It is stylized, but it's not the same kind of stylized as, the Dollars trilogy. It's different. And it's a little bit more sad. It's not as cool. It's not as hip. It's just like kind of morose, sad kind of story about the ending of it all, and I think it's brilliant. I think it's wonderful. The commentary by the host of the Spaghetti Western podcast, to be honest, I'm used to, people like Troy Howarth or Tim Lucas or Nathaniel Thompson, Sam Deegan, somebody like that, anybody, or Galani, coming on with these podcasts, or anybody that does the classic film. Who's the guy who does all? Stephen Bissett, doing these commentaries, and they break everything down. That's this actor, that's this director, this is this DP, this is this, and they break it down. They see this shot here. I don't think that this commentary is good enough for the best spaghetti Western of all time. I'm gonna be honest with you. There's parts where they're like, well, they killed Cheyenne's guys there, and then later they're like, oh, I guess those were Frank's guys. It's like, hey guys, I don't know if that's up to snuff on this. I'm sure I'd enjoy their podcast if I listened to it, but I mean, to tackle the spaghetti, the pinnacle of the spaghetti Western, and kind of like not rewatch it before and kind of have questions like, oh, that's Cheyenne's guy. It's like, what the fuck is going on here, guys? Like, come on. Like, this is not up to snuff. I would recommend listening to the commentary with people like Milius and Alex Cox and Carpenter. Although Carpenter is, because Carpenter, he'll shed some light on some of the technical aspects too. Honestly, I would love to hear a commentary that was either breaking down the technical aspects of the filmmaking, like, oh, look at this shot here, it's going to loop over this, the whole or just historians in general, like big historians on there. And the other features include a new look with Leonard Maltin, an opera of violence, The Wages of Sin. These are kind of like featurettes with a bunch of different interviews from people, some of them seemingly reused for the commentary. Something to do with death, the railroad revolutionizing the West, locations then and now. But just, if you've never seen Once Upon a Time in the West, do yourself a favor. I do think you probably should watch the Dollars trilogy first to kind of get the full grasp of these movies and everything like that. But Jason Robards, underrated actor. I don't know. I mean, like, everybody loves him, but I don't hear people bring up Robards in conversation that often as one of the greats. But, man, with this performance and other performances I've seen all time's great. And Bronson's never been cooler, man. I love Charles Bronson. He's one of my all-time favorites. I love the Death Wish movies. I love his like parts of ensemble cast, like Great Escape and Dirty Dozen. He's stand out in those movies, or Magnificent Seven. Fantastic actor. But I love him in this movie. He's just perfect. He's perfect as that strong, silent type that Eastwood was playing in the other ones. And he's laid back, and the dialogue is great. And they do mention in the commentary here how good the commentary is, how good the dialogue is, how they're playing with you. You don't necessarily know. And then there's a punchline in all the dialogue. And it's just good stuff. Highly recommended. Diegetic music with the harmonica is also perfect, but just one of the all-time best movies ever made. And I couldn't end this show without talking about Once Upon a Time in the West, so I'm glad somebody picked it as a Patreon pick. You saved me a watch, but hell, I'd watch that movie anytime. I showed one of my friends who had never seen it, and I was like, what'd you think? And he's like, it's really good. And of course, if it wasn't, I kicked him out of my fucking house. But yeah, that's the review on that one. All right, let's get these questions, comments, and everything. Bill Clay. I've always liked Maximum Overdrive. I think it's a bit tiresome at the truck stop, if I remember rightly. I haven't watched it in decades. I would agree with that. There's a little bit of repetitiveness. No More Room in Hell podcast. Do they sell movies? Sell all the movies in the Shawscope sets individually or only in the package deal? Right now, these ones are only in the package deal, and I think eventually they did start. Some of the companies, I think like Eureka, had these box sets, like Chang-Chi movies, like 10 movies, and then they would start like breaking them up. And I think that Shaw did that as well, too. Didn't they? I think the first set of Shaw Brothers, they kind of broke it down into sets of 4. Maybe that wasn't Arrow. Maybe it was like somebody else. I can't remember, but these ones right now are only in the set. What the Flick? It's funny. Maximum Overdrive was a childhood favorite of mine. It's one of those movies that I didn't know people thought it was bad until the early days of YouTube reviews. Same with Howard the Duck and Master Universe. Also, my favorite bad movie is Nutbag. Talking about the what's the hell's that guy who did Murder Set Pieces, Nick Palumbo movie. I've never actually watched Nutbag, but Howard the Duck was one that I never had a super fondness for. I saw it probably once when I was a kid, and it wasn't something I rewatched a lot. But Maximum Overdrive and Master Universe were 2 that I watched all the fucking time, and I grew to understand that Master Universe was a terrible movie in the aspect that it's a terrible Master Universe movie, but it sure as hell makes a fun Star Wars ripoff, and I've always loved it, and I have a fondness for it, and I know a lot of it's nostalgia. That's the one thing. I don't mind if people know why they like a movie. It's like, hey, this movie, I love it, I adore it, and a lot of it is nostalgia. Like there's so many people that argue blue in the face that a really bad movie or a movie that they'll like, there's no flaws in this movie because I liked it when I was 4. It's like, there's flaws. I just, I forgive them or I overlook the flaws, but I like to try to think somewhat self-aware that sometimes movies I like aren't necessarily great. But, that's fine. That's fine. If you liked everything that everyone else liked, you wouldn't be you. We'd all be the same. Ken Coakley, again, I didn't get my comment read. The latest I ever got in was Thursday morning. Yeah, usually I have no control if YouTube's not posting them. This one was different because they had Thanksgiving, and I shoot them Thursday. I didn't really want to spend Thanksgiving shooting this video. I just didn't have time. Vanessa Hexy, or Hex, you kicked it off strong. House with Laughing Windows is one of my favorite gialli. Great choice. I mean, it's a great movie. Thank you. Way Up Dude gives me a thumbs up. Ken Coakley also says, I got the response. He said, did you get anything for Black Friday? I did. Some of them are here. I got some other stuff as well, like Crunchyroll had a lot of those on sale. Deep Discount, I did some stuff and whatnot. I'll show them when they come. But yeah, I like to show you off on their things and stuff like that, but when they all come, if that made any sense, I don't know if it did. But Nick from Flanders, I hope you had a lovely Thanksgiving surrounded by loved ones. Also, did those dastardly cats catch your turkey for you this year? Dude, my cats are lazy. They've got to earn their keep, right? Mine keep bringing me dead rats. I haven't decided whether or not I'll be cooking them. I have a rat burger, like Demolition Man. I enjoyed both Trucks, especially a fine performance from young Brendan Fletcher, a Canadian actor, and Maximum Overdrive, not the worst Stephen King adaptations by a long shot. I've never seen the whole thing of Trucks, but Maximum Overdrive isn't even the worst adaptation Mr. King was personally involved with. Did anyone here see the King's version of The Shining? Yikes. I did not. It never sounded like I'd be interested. Question, would you recommend the... I would recommend... What is this? Would you recommend the OG Miracle on 34th Street? The remake was okay, especially Richard Attenborough's performance, R.I.P. You know what? I don't think I've ever seen the whole thing of Miracle on 34th Street, but I'm sure many people would recommend it. It's a classic for a reason, right? I probably should watch that. Ta-da for now. Last week's comments, he says, I actually enjoyed Bad Moon back in the day, like Predator 2 was all over TV in the mid to late 90s. In 1994's Wolf, featuring Jack Nicholson, James Spader, Christopher Plummer, and Michelle Pfeiffer. Even though the majority of the critics loathed both films and stated that the entire werewolf subgenre almost died a slow death in the 90s, they threw quite a hissy fit back then. Yeah, Bad Moon is fun, and Wolf is I like Wolf. But Wolf's a better middle-aged guy having like a reborn kind of life than a werewolf movie. I still like the movie. Next, I'd love to see a zombie flick from the point of view of a black cat living in a graveyard. How about you, sir? Oh, I mean, I would watch that movie, but what would I want to see, a zombie movie point of view? I don't know. As you promised, Sinners was excellent watch. Quite the bittersweet ending. Also, who knew that Jack O'Lad O'Connell could sing and dance? Whew. I always suspected he would have a great career when I saw him in the first, all the way back in 2008, in Jack Watkins' Eden Lake, a great evil teenage Chavs movie. Watkins would go on to direct 2012's The Woman in Black, and more recently, the 2024 Speak No Evil remake. Oh, I've seen the Speak No Evil remake. It's all right. I mean, I like the original more, but I don't love the original either. I think it's both solid. I think the original's a good movie that I won't want to watch again. And the remake was okay. I don't love Eden Lake. I haven't seen it in years though. But questions: do you think the whole clowns gestures are creepy as fuck phase will die down? I mean, clowns are always going to be creepy, and gestures, they pop up movies forever, especially when you can make low budget movies. They probably won't ever completely die out, but there'll probably be peaks and valleys like everything. Do you ever encounter a clown that actually made you feel uncomfortable? A real life clown, huh? No, because they're in haunted houses, are trying to scare you. But I've seen clowns that look creepy. You know what I mean? I mean, like any clown, if there's no, like, just walking around the street for no reason would be creepy. What's your favorite Evil Young Punks movie? Evil Young Punks movie. Just off the top of my head, we're gonna go class of 1984. I Am the Future. Take a look at my face. Till next time, God willing, take care and enjoy Thanksgiving. P.S. Should you encounter Patrick Dempsey on Thanksgiving, head for the hills or holler so the cats can come save you. Like, again, I told you, my cats are lazy. They're not going to save me from anything. Then, except for they'll save me from some of my money. And then Bretta Do United FC gives me a little devil face. Thank you. We're going to get into this update, guys. All right, hop into this update real quick. First up, pretty cheap on Black Friday was Sinners. Michael B. Jordan in this one. Love this movie to death. My favorite horror film of the year so far. I look forward to rewatching it. Only watched it the one time in theaters. Next up, we have a doozy here, 4K set of the Better Tomorrow trilogy here. Of course, all three of the films in there. Awesome stuff that Scream Factory's putting these out. Arrow's putting them out over in the UK. Look forward to... I've seen the first one, watching the other two. Then we have The Killer, of course, Chow Yun-fat, classic movie here, John Woo movie. Love this movie to death. Great stuff. Saw it the first time a long time ago. Watched it a couple times. Look forward to rewatching this in 4K. I am pissed I missed out on The Hard Boiled. Who would have thought that movie would have sold out? I mean, it's a very popular movie. I thought they would just print a lot of them. Didn't think I had to worry about it. I guess I'll have to do the Arrow import. Then we have... Chinese Odyssey parts 1 and 2 was on sale, dirt cheap. It was like $12. Picked these up, $19.95 on this. This is the Journey to the West, I think, the story here. So I'm looking forward to watching that. I'm somewhat familiar with it only through like Shaw Brothers movies and things of that nature. So let's see what they got in there. And then, of course, I had to get this bad boy. I got it from Grove, and I got order first, like 15% off, so I got a good deal on this one. Shaw Brothers Classics Volume 8 here. So what do we got in here? Return of the Bastard Swordsman, Secret Service of the Imperial Court, The Enchantress, which is a 1983 horror movie, New Tales of the Flying Fox, Cat vs. Rat, Ghost Galore, another 1983 horror film from Shaw, Ambitious Kung Fu Girl, The Treasure Hunters, The Duel of the Century, Emperor and His Brother, Return of the Sentimental Swordsman, Perils of the Sentimental Swordsman here. So I've been buying all these sets. I'm so glad I got them all so far. One day I will be able to just watch nonstop Shaw Brother movies. And hell, I might not even have to review them at one point. But that is the entire update. More to come, of course. You know, Kino's got their sale going on, and I grabbed some stuff from them. Of course, you can't pass up Dust Devil and Rampage on 4K. But yeah, let's get out of here. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching, and as always, have a good one.